Hi everyone, welcome to Lanarkshire Family History Society's webinar for November. My name is Claire Wilson and I will be your host this evening. We would be obliged if you would turn off your cameras and your sound until the presentation's over. It just sort of hopefully keeps any background noise to a minimum, allows everyone to enjoy the webinar, and then hopefully we won't have any screens freezing or anything as well. Pop a quick note into the chat box and tell us where you're watching from today. I love the fact that we get people from all over the world. If you're a member of the society, take a minute to actually visit the new members section on the website. The password for this, I think, was in your e-news last month. So have a look, because we've got all the new, all the past journals. You can also access all the previous webinars, and there'll be lots of stuff getting added as we go on as well. So Karen's in Enfield. Who else have we got? No one else telling us where they are today. I know we've got some locals because I can see some local names in there. Okay. Right. I'm just going to mute everyone that's unmuted. Just give me a second. Oh, hi Helen. Nice seeing you after Friday. Okay, right, let's get started. So tonight, my good friend Jade Nunn of Hatch, Match and Dispatch will provide tonight's presentation, which is titled Sourcing the Seven Seas, Setting Sail on Your Archival Research. Jade actually graduated just last week from Strathclyde University, gaining a Master's with first class honours in Genealogy. During her studies, her diploma dissertation focused on a group of Royal Naval Division men who were actually interned in Holland. And we'll actually learn a little bit about that during tonight's presentation. Jade, how are you?
Oh yeah, I'm just peachy. How are you?
I'm very good. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you. And I said to Claire, even though she said not to worry, but I do apologize if I am very speedy. Just maybe pop in the chat, or you can even unmute yourself and just say slow down. Because I know hopefully my accent's quite clear because it's very obviously London based, so that's where I am. Just outside Heathrow Airport. So yeah, do let me know if my speed is an issue. Please
Do you
don't
know
be
what?
afraid.
I've said to you, Jade, I think it'll be fine because us Scots actually speak very fast, so it should be all right.
Yeah,
So I'll let
but
you share your screen.
yes. So the technical side of things, I'm not the greatest with, so just bear with.
I'll let you know when it comes up anyway.
So hopefully it should be up.
Right. Okay, I'll mute myself and turn my video off and just hand over to you then.
Okay, so I will also turn my video off, but I'm happy to come back on as well. Just so you have to see my mug whilst we're talking. So yeah, so the naval aspect of things has always been like a part of me. So as Claire kindly mentioned, my prior diploma was about the Timber Town men, but mainly about the follies. So as you can see here, they're, dressed as clowns, and they were interned for, 4 years. So they had to think of something to do. So a guy called Fred Penley made up the troupe. He was actually quite well to do in the entertainment industry, as his dad was like into the whole dressing up sort of thing in the 1900s. So he was actually quite popular anyway. So he already had that background to begin with. So I focused on these men because my link is this guy to the right. So that is my great grandfather, Cecil Gunther. The H was dropped, funnily enough. So it's now Gunter. But in World War II, yeah, the family decided to drop the H, just for politics reasons, I guess. But we were on the English side, so I suppose that helps in some ways. But yeah, he was also interned here. And he was a craftsman, and I'm not very good with woodwork and stuff like that. And there wasn't much you could find. So I do come from a sort of entertainment background. My degree, funnily enough, is actually in tap dancing. I know. It's so yeah, very strange, long story. So I thought the Follies would be a perfect opportunity to, find these men, and it was a good number of men too. So that's where I sort of expertise in. My dissertation as well was also on the men who were shot at dawn. So that was the men in World War One, but from a genealogical perspective. So there was one naval man in that group of 346, and he was tried under military court, but he really should have been tried under naval court. So, and when this was all going on, it was all very kept hush hush. That was one of the first newspaper reports that really got the viewers, because it was very outrageous at the time that this seaman had been, tried and shot basically within, I think, about a day of getting his sentence. So not much anyone could do. So another interest of mine is also DNA. So the man on the left is my father. So this is him, drink in hand. I believe it's orange juice, but there's probably something else in it. But yeah, so I found my biological father 2008. And again, that sort of spurred me on a different journey. My Irish ancestry to start, because that's where his parents were from. So DNA, he was Irish, but very, very accented like myself. So no lovely Irish accent, I'm afraid. But sadly, he passed in 2015, so he was only 51. So again, it just is another reason for ask those questions, get those things down, because you never know when your time's up. So that's how I've come to be. So next, we're going to have a look at how to trace and where to look for your ancestors in some of the following repositories. So obviously the National Archives, not so helpful for you guys if you're up in Scotland, but hopefully some of these tips will make you either make the trip or do it from afar. I forgot to change this spelling because me and Claire were discussing some Dutch yesterday. So the Police Register, I'm sure my Dutch is really spot on, but it means police register basically. And you can find this at the archiven.nl, which the link is in the chat. Obviously, Scotland's people, you'll see this in an example as well, but there are other military things you can find out from wills, etc. But again, you guys probably are the experts at that bit in regards to, finding the censuses, etc. So you can judge my put together on that in one of my examples. And the Portsmouth Dockland Museum Archive and the archive, it's very confusing because there's a separate archive where you need military clearance, and then there's the museum archive itself, and then you've also got Portsmouth archives like by the council. So hopefully through some examples, it'll be a lot easier. And I will send Claire like a handout as well. So, and any questions, you can fire them at me later. So the National Archives. So I mean, this is like my second home most days. And Karen, who I said hello to at the beginning, was more in shock as she was on, but I meet her randomly there. Like, it is a hub for most records. So what can be found when you're looking for your naval ancestors and where you need to look and what you need to order? So admiralty is a huge, huge section. So that would be where one or if not more of your ancestors would fall into. The War Office, so this obviously covers the Army, the RAF, and the Commonwealth, people not in the Commonwealth. So it can be quite a head blur if you're looking on Discovery and don't understand how to use Discovery. So again, myself and Claire was discussing this. I watched her talk last week in Scotland, and yeah, it needs work. It's not brilliant, but it's definitely getting there. And Board of Trade. So we'll focus on the Register of Seamen on this part of it. And then how best to order if you are traveling down. So you've got the advanced orders. So these can be made really months in advance up until the week before. But if you make it the week before, you've only got that time period, that day, to order your 12 documents. You also have 3 on reserve, and you only get those if your other ones, the other 12, are not available. Bulk orders would probably be best for you guys if you were traveling down, because you can order up to 40 documents, again in advance. But the only downside to this is that it has to be from the same reference group. So, for example, a POW card, the WO416, if you have 40 of those, that would be near enough perfect, because some of them have 1 card in, some of them have 3, some of them have 10, but they're quite small. And believe me, you wouldn't get through the bigger files. You'd have to go back the next day for sure. So when I was doing my dissertation, I had 346 files to look at, and I had the help of my father-in-law, and we, even having 40 between the two of us, we just had to keep reordering. So because again, you've got a file of 20 pages and you've got a file of 200, depending on what the situation was of that particular individual. Then you've got on the day ordering. So again, you can only order up to 3 documents when you arrive at the archives. Excuse me. So you need to get there early, because they can't promise that you won't get a seat. And they do have plenty of spaces, but they are sort of going with the COVID rules that they had. So usually the round tables in the middle are 4 to a table, but you usually only see 2 people either side, just to be on the safe side. But yeah, you can order 3 documents. Roughly the turnaround's about 45 minutes to an hour. So if you're there nice and early, you can go up, order your stuff, and then literally the restaurant in the main bit is, the sausage sandwiches are great. So it's a win-win in my account. So I'll be having one tomorrow, I would have thought. So so I'm back there tomorrow. So the first lot we'll look at is Admiralty. So this collection obviously it consists of naval forces, Royal Marines, Coast Guard, and anything naval related. It can be extremely overwhelming. As I said, this is where you'd expect most of your ancestors, if they're involved in the Navy, to be in this file. But knowing what you're looking for really would help, because as I said, the discovery is quite underwhelming in comparison. So the whole thing can be overwhelming and underwhelming all at the same time. And you can just end up sort of drawing blanks, and myself included sometimes, because the description base isn't always helpful. So unless you've sort of come from a family of well-to-do captains, you'll probably be fine. You can probably put in their surname and they will pop up straight away. But like myself, if you're from sort of bog standard able seaman, it's unlikely that you're going to find a personal file. Again, you might find like a page, half a page, but that's also on Find My Past and free downloads on certain files anyway. Because sometimes you have to look at their sort of brigade or their regiment or their groupings to find your man, which can take a long time. So just if you are looking for your odd man, just normal guy, just be prepared to have your research, maybe take a few people, because you're going to not get to all of them, or you might miss some of them, unfortunately. Now, just to go on one thing, there's a file series there called the ADM1. So this is for ancestors who might have been mentioned in the London Gazette or the Edinburgh Gazette, who received awards for, gallantry. As you can see here, we've got the George Medal up top, but who we're going to look at is your lovely able seaman Arthur Lee with the British Empire Medal, or BEM. So this was in the ADM 1 series, and if you put in his name, he does not come up. So it's all about looking at the Gazette and putting in the key words of what you might find. So we've got mine disposal. That is more likely to come up, and then you put in a year, either side maybe of when it happened, rather than putting able seaman Arthur Lee. Is it's probably not going to come up. So there's a lot more entailed into looking. And again, this is what people look for, is the recommendation. A lot of medal collectors like having these. It raises the prices if they're selling them. I mean, I have medals here, but I have them on the wall. So yeah, I mean, this is what people look for because it gives you the whole thing. It's not just what's in the Gazette, where it doesn't really sometimes tell you a lot. This is like the whole thing, and it proves that it happened. But these things, you know, these awards, they range from mention in dispatches, which is often known as MID with a little I, up to such achievements such as OBEs, CBEs. So it's worth having a search before coming down. But Mr. Lee here, he actually appeared in 2 ADM files for the same thing. So this is again where it can get quite confusing. And this is also the citation. So he appeared in ADM 1 twice, and he also appeared in Air 2. So I know Claire is the expert on this bit, but it means he was either taking off from some, you know, his ship had aircraft on, or the aircraft was taking off, or they were doing something together to do these mine disposals. You've got the parachute mines right there on the citation. So he features in 3, but 1 is the air. So again, you can't even rule out the Air Force. But again, it depends on what your man was doing. So now we'll look at the War Office. So again, this is probably the most popular just in general because, as I said, it covers Commonwealth men and women and people from all over the world, but of the Army, Navy, and the RAF and other like situations that have happened, so like colonial. So the most popular one I find is the War Office. This is the most I get for requests. Is the 416 collection, Prisoner of War cards. So once you've gone on Discovery and hopefully figured it out, you'll get something up like this. So we can see you've got Claude, Randolph, Keats. Got some nice information, born on the 7th of December, 1915. We've got that he's from Rugeley in Staffordshire. He's part of the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve, commonly known as RNVR. He's a lieutenant. So, and then you've got some other things here that say unspecified. We know what camp he's in, and we know his POW number. There's no fingerprints, no x-rays, no photos, because some do contain photographs as well, and x-rays, which are very interesting to see if you come across this within your searching. Obviously not very nice, but it is history. So yeah, it's a fascinating what you never know what you're going to get when the envelope turns up. So these are obviously you need to be quite protective of maybe family members who, you know, it's quite raw, who might be visiting their granddad's stuff to see. So they do keep these files in the invigilation room. This is just a little room off of the main reading room on level 1. So once you're in there, you'll get a box like this. And as you can see, there is an envelope inside. So once opened, we can see 3 cards are in this. So again, this would be perfect for bulk ordering. Again, name repeated and date of birth. And this is what one of the cards tells you. So this is the main card we always look for. So country of origin could be South Africa, again, if we're Commonwealthing, but here we've got England. As you can see, where Rugeley is, Stafford's, we know is Staffordshire, the date of birth, 7th of the 12th, 1915. Claude Randolph, and then Keats above it is the surname. And then we've got the camp here, Stalag 8. So at the bottom here, we also have the movements. So this is basically saying on the 24th of July, 42, he was in Stalag 8. And then about just 2 months later, he's then moved to Oflag 4 with the C, which is actually for Colditz. Again, these are not on every card because obviously if they didn't move, but some of these are irrelevant to the actual card and the person themselves. But also it depends what the people filling them in put. So here, I mean, you can have a wild guess. It is lieutenant, I mean, it doesn't look like lieutenant, but it is. So that's his rank. So once he gets over, we can see why he's moved because of appendicitis. Now, the middle name has disappeared here, and the date of birth, we've got a year difference. So I know I like things to be precise. So a year might not matter to some, but to me, it definitely does. So obviously, I would take note of this. And then, as I said, the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserves, it wasn't on the first card, but it is on this card of his service. So this was the second card. The third card was actually a duplicate of this card. And then let's look at Claude. So this is the snip I've taken from freebmd.org. If you don't know this site, we'll put it in the link in the chats. So again, we've got Claude R. We know his middle name's Randefelt Font, however it's spelt, Keats. And he was registered in March 1916. So registered, not births. So, and it's not just March, it could be January, February, March, which does make sense if he was born on the 7th of December 1915. You know, Mrs. Keats, formerly Chadderton, might have thought, oh, Christmas is coming, it's a bit cold, maybe I'll wait for better weather. I mean, January's not that much better, but, you know, you just don't know people's reasonings. And obviously it is, you know, wartime at the time as well, World War One. So Lichfield is in the Staffordshire area, so we're onto a win-win. But the GRO, which is Your Scotland's People, so the GRO, General Registry Office, didn't come up with Claude. And I was thinking, what on earth, where is he? Because, you know, Claude is a popular-ish name, but the middle name, if you were putting it in, you'd think, okay, I could maybe do a little bit and then put a star to get some sort of wild cards. So when returning to the GRO and searching his surname, I use the volume and page number because I'd had enough. I was like, where is this man? So we can now see this is why I couldn't find him. So they've transcribed it as Cland. Now, I don't know who made the transcription error, but you can judge this for yourself in a second. Randefelt, I mean, it sort of makes sense, Randolph. If someone, you know, if the Germans were filling that in and heard, that's what they heard. You know, fair, that's okay. But Cland, I haven't heard many clans. Please let me know if you know any clans out there. But you can see why the person has put Cland, because clearly it does look a bit like an N, but it looks like a U. And we can clearly see as well, he was born on the 7th of December 1915. His mother was Dorothy Mary Alice Chadderton. And he was registered on the 14th of Jan 1916. So that all sort of clears him up. So Board of Trade. So here we're going to have a look at the example of a BT 372, which is the Register of Shipping and Seamen, or Seamen's Records, basically, without all this fancy stuff in front of it. So again, you can search the name, which is a lot easier if you know who you're looking for. And here, if you just look at the dates, the range, so these records start from 1913 up to 1972. So we've got some GDPR issues here. So these are usually viewed, I've viewed them in the invigilation room, and I've viewed them also in the main reading room too. So I don't really know much difference between the previous WO416s we were looking at to this, in fairness. But I think because of GDPR and privacy, and obviously, you know, the date of birth is here. I mean, this person could still be alive. It's possible. And going up to 1972 as well, they have redactions, which is removals basically of the national insurance number, fingerprints, and any medical stuff. You know, being in the Navy, you just don't know what you might have picked up along the way. So the WF in the first bit stands for William Frederick Wells. He was born again 5th of August 1930 from Brentford, Middlesex, near London, actually right near the archives. We've got a nice physical description here. and obviously you can colorize these photos now as well. So you could always have fun with that and see if these match the descriptions. So grey, greeny eyes, fair hair, as we can clearly see, actually, you can see that in the black and white. 6'2", which you can't see in the photo. Distinguishing marks, it is blank. It doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't have any, but they're looking for things like scars, tattoos, moles, anything like that. So it's possible he didn't have anything, but maybe they just didn't find it. Again, you can clearly see, again, these are the fingerprints. So yeah, that's all taken away. I'm guessing this has to be the medical stuff. Again, it could be blank. We don't ever get to see it. It's only the staff. And because these, they do have to go and collect them, do all this information of putting the paper over, etc., etc. If staff can't redact the information on site or on the day, if you're booked in as a day visitor or even an advance order visitor, they will email you a copy in PDF free of charge. So at least that's something, because they are a bit tricky to sort of, for the staff anyway, to take this away and make sure they're doing the right thing and, following for not to upset anybody. Again, a nice bit of genealogy information. We've got the next of kin and the address. So luckily, I hope he didn't have any medical conditions because he's my great uncle. But if he did, it is what it is at the end of the day. And I mean, as I said, he could have been alive, but sadly he's not. So the picture on the right was taken a few years prior to his death. So yeah, so it's just a nice, to compare the two photos and see him as a boy, because I'd personally never seen him like this. So their family were quite poor in Brentford, and they didn't have the facilities to sort of take photographs, and if they did, it was a group one, really. So yeah, it's quite nice if you have ancestral roots to the Navy, and just look at the border trade as well, because you never know. So next, my incorrect spelling of the police register in Dutch, and the camp magazine, Holland, the Netherlands. I'm just going to go back on that because I made some notes and I should really follow them. I've just been going off key because I've actually got something Scottish to share with you. So I'm going to do some examples here from the men from the Isle of Lewis. Now, I've never been to the Isle of Lewis. I know nothing about the Isle of Lewis. I know I want to go there because it looks really nice in pictures, but that's about as far as my knowledge of the Isle of Lewis goes. But what I do know is that they were interned with my great-great-granddad and those follies. So I know that much. So I probably know about the background more than the actual men themselves. So I thought I'd pick them randomly just to also go along the journey with you. So as I said, they're part of the R&D. They were interned in Holland. And they were one of the first to sign up because they were caught in the October of 1914. They weren't caught, sorry. They crossed over the border in 1914. So we know that at least the Isle of Lewis men would have had to have left quite early into 1914 to come down to Blandford and do some minuscule training and then go across. And they're commonly known also as Churchill's Little Army. So these men obviously were interned in Holland for up to 4 years. And this was after they were in Antwerp and it just completely failed. I mean, they were seamen on land. So they didn't have really much hope and they didn't get a lot of training, like days, maybe. It was quite bad situation for them. So when they got the message finally that the other battalions and stuff and the commanders had left and retreated, this particular group of 1,500 men did not get that message. So they got it I think about 4 hours late. And at that point, when they got to a bridge to cross to either try and escape back to England or take their bets, out in the forests and the woods somewhere and hope for the best, the last men prior to them blew the bridge up. So they had really no choice. So they crossed in over to Hulst in Holland. Now, Holst was overwhelmed with not just these men, because this was like a tiny town, but also the Belgian refugees too. So after a few days, the men were transported by train to Groningen and to Het Ingelskamp. So, and it was very woody, lots of materials. I went 2 years ago. So there's nothing remaining, sadly, just like a little, like, I can't think of the word, like the sort of like a little hut. But yeah, that's about it. But yeah, it's very woodland even still now. So they built all their camp. They built where they ate. They built the theatre that they performed in. So obviously 4 years is a long time to be stuck with 1,500 men. So looking at the 106 from Lewis, this is about just over 7% of the total of 1,500 men. So to break this down a little bit further, we've got, I'm just going to move my mouse, the 1,500 men and the 106 from Lewis in the camp. So looking at the next column are the statistics for the 1911 census taken in the town of North Tolster. So I have no idea of this town. I might not even be pronouncing it right, but I think I am. You can let me know afterwards. So we've got 853 residents, of which 400 were men. And then 231 of those 400 were on active service. So you can do the maths, and we already know that that's like half the men gone. And then looking at the interned column here, from those 231 men, 15 of them were interned in Holland. So that's quite big, I think, personally. I mean, I'm going to show you this next. So I love a pie. So this is a pie I made earlier. But it's over half, you know, the men on active service compared to the men at home. And when I say men at home, it's really males. So you've got the elderly, the sick, the ones just not fit for service, children. And then you've got, I know, 4% of that whole total are in Holland. So yeah, it must have had a big impact on that town. And, you know, also, you know, getting back to normal life after it, or when then the men, if they returned at all. So I randomly picked 3 men out of the pile from North Tolster. So John McRitchie. Now this file here is an ADM. It's downloadable for free if you have an account on the National Archives. You don't have to, you just sign up, you don't have to pay. You used to, but you don't anymore. So as you can clearly see, it says interned in Holland. We've got branch of service is RNR, which is the Royal Naval Reserves. Then also you can see here R&D, Royal Naval Division is there too. So what we're getting from this at least is the address, which is great. He's in the Benbow Battalion. My great-great-granddad was in Collingwood. So there's a few battalions. I think mostly the Tolster men, it looks like, were from Benbow. We've got his dad here, Kenneth McRitchie. So we've got a few things to go off. Also, sorry, I didn't mention that this file is also on Find My Past. So if you do have a problem trying to find things on Discovery and you have a subscription there, you might fare better. So as you can see here, the 17th of April 1916, there were certificates sent to Blandford. So this was giving you a rundown after all the internment. I'm just going to say something here, and I'll come on to this in a minute. But 29th of January 1918, he's on leave from Holland, expiring on the 28th of November 1918. Now that's a lot of leave. Whilst he's on leave, he's at the address 14 North Tolster. Again, it could be 40 and maybe it's mistyped, but 14, I mean, small town. And here at the bottom, we've got every year he's there, except for 1918, because they did it in the December, and he might have already gone by then. Very good, superb character. And believe it or not, near enough everyone in that camp is very good and superior, like super character. So he is number 322 in the Holland character book. So I couldn't fit all this in. So I've gone a bit deeper with Tolquill because I really liked his name. So we don't get many Tolquills in Staines. So again, we've got the address. We've got the next of kin as his father, but no name, nothing. Now you can see, these aren't filled in, but a lot of the time the religion is filled in. So just be aware if you are looking, just because there's blanks here, doesn't mean they're blank on everyone else. At the bottom, again, he's very good. And he's number 325 in the book, in the character book. And again, he's on leave the 29th of December, 1916, until the 26th of March, 1918. No, he's not. I completely made that up because there's another date there. So on the 12th of December, 1918, he's on leave, and then it expires on the 29th of December. That makes more sense. So from here, I went on Scotland's People. And these were the only three men in that sort of time period who could potentially be Torquil. So, I mean, it's definitely the one in 1887 for sure. But we don't know. He could be an older gentleman and he's gone across. We just don't know. So there is a potential of three, but I'm hedging my bets. It's 1887. So let's find out. So I went to find my past because obviously they've got a transcription of the Scottish censuses for us. So we can have a look and then go and purchase off of Scotland's People. So perfect, 1901, I've got the address, I'm happy. And here's the transcription from Find My Past. Again, the age figures 13, 1888. So, he's maybe not turned the next year, or he's already turned 14, 13, or he's going to turn 14. So we know it's that one, which we thought. And we've now got the father, John, fisherman, and Mary. Now, Mary is not his mother, it's going to all come clear in a minute. So, but you would assume it's his mother. So we've got Mary MacDonald, and then we have a stepdaughter, Mary Graham. So basically, that's Mary's daughter. Then Torquil, then Annie, and then Murdo. And then I purchased this off Scotland's People because I just want to see it for myself because I never trust anyone. So you just don't know. Now, as you're aware, this wasn't at the top of the list, so it didn't have that on it. So I just snipped it in. So there's the real census for us. And then we've got his birth. So as I said, Mary wasn't his mother, as we now know is Christina. So she obviously died before the 1901 census. And we've got John up top and Torquil, born in August the 28th. Then we've got his marriage. So obviously he was interned for all this time, and yeah, nicely he got married. Very nice. But if you have a look here, he's actually married his stepsister. So, because you can see this here, because Mary Graham, and then his dad, his mum, and the ages fit prior to in the census as well. She's a year older. So obviously we're assuming there's no blood relation, but with these small towns, you just don't know. I mean, as I said, I come from Irish background, so I know in our small town of Balnamore in Leitrim, there was, cousins marrying cousins because they had to. But yeah, obviously it's not really today's thing, but yeah, just be aware that you might find more people you're related to, which might cause troubles in your trees. So just look out for that, because even looking at the registrar, we've got another McRitchie here. So, and Campbell is his mother's maiden name. So obviously maybe this is a grandmother or an aunt who wasn't married. So yeah, just look at everything. And then his death certificate. So he died in 1963. Now I know I've got a degree in paleography, but the genealogy was more my side of things. So this is obviously quite hard to, the handwriting compared to the other two. And probably the marriage one is much clearer. So yeah, just take your time trying to transcribe that. But there are lots of groups on Facebook who love this sort of thing. So I know if I was struggling, I've got some very good friends at Strathclyde University who can help me. So don't be put off by it, just give it a go. And someone's eye is always better than your own sometimes. So, and then the last man I picked was Norman Smith. I said I didn't have enough time to do as much on as I did on Torquil. But I thought Norman Smith was great because everyone has a Smith in their family tree, and everyone hates the Smiths being in their family tree because you never can get further back. Again, I'm not 100% sure whether the Smith surname is really, really popular in Scotland, but I know it is down here. So Norman Smith, again, we've got mother as his next of kin here, Catherine, and the address North Tolster, 55. He's got a very good character. He's number 331 in the book. But what's great about Norman is even though I would hate him in my family tree to try and find, but because he was interned in Holland, the Dutch records, he's really easy to find because there's not many Smiths in there, only the men who were really interned in that time period. So this is great to then go and have a look. So don't be disheartened. So by using the Archiven website, which we've put in the chat, all of these 1,500 men can be found, like via the full name or the initial and surname or just the surname. So if I was saying like MacDonald, like Torquil, that's probably, quite a common surname up in Scotland. So, you need to put Mac with an A, Mac without the A, and just play around with it, but you'll get hopefully a fast result because there's only 1,500 of these men. So these are the men, and these are all, so as I said, you can get all the photographs of these men. So here is John McRitchie. I've colorized the photos. So, you saw my great-great-granddad prior in the black and white. That's how it usually is, a little bit blurred. So I've unblurred this and colorized it. There's Torquil. So yeah, and Norman Smith. And I said, Norman's looking quite good, I have to say. Maybe it's something about a man in uniform, but they look, even though they're in their situation they're in, they're looking, maybe a bit displeased. But I mean, John's got a nice smile. So, they were, I think, trying to keep us maybe a bit of a stiff upper lip and just getting on with it. And there's the link there. So I don't know, some people prefer to write things down. I don't think you need the HTTP, but it is in the chat. So the camp magazine. So whilst they were interned here, they made a camp magazine. They were given a typewriter by the British Embassy and started creating this camp magazine. So each magazine has its own unique, different cover. There are 44 of them in total. And yeah, they would do like a little competition and little drawings, and that would get featured as the front card, like the front cover. So the magazine actually started in the April of 15, because obviously they were crossing borders and building their accommodations. So this came a little bit later, and because they were being repatriated sort of between November of 1918 to January, February of 1919, the magazine stopped in the November of 1918. So what can you find? And again, you cannot find this anywhere else but in the magazine. So you've got clubs like chess, sporting events and who won the medals. So the swimming event and the athletics. Football was huge. This was probably a time where we used to be good at football. So the Dutch really clocked on to these Englishmen and Scotsmen and whoever was part of the R&D playing football, and they went and they toured the Netherlands. They were allowed out of camp, and they played against the Dutch. They played, there's lots of newspaper articles which can also be found on Archiven website as well. I mean, it is in Dutch, but you can pick out the names of the guys quite quickly. Arts and crafts. So as I said, my great-great-granddad was into carpentry. So they had a woodwork station, and they would also sell their wares back home, but also to the local people. It was a long time to be in a town full of these, locals wondering who these strange men were. The the locals used to invite them around for dinner, and to say thanks because they didn't really have anything was to make them these lovely wood crafts, and also give them the camp magazine as well. We've got deaths and obituaries, sadly, as well within the camp magazines, and there's not too many, but there are some. News from home is always important to most people when they're sort of restricted on what they can do. News within the camp, obviously, if there was a show going on, or again, the football team, or people were selling, some old trousers, but also news from their fellow comrades. So it was important because some of the men who didn't go across into Hulst and some of the men who got home, some of them ended up in Dubritz in the prisoner of war camp, and they had some real issues with food. So the men started a bread fund, and any sort of things they earned from football games, tournaments, and the Timbertown Folly shows would pay for this bread for their comrades. Now, also, if any did get home, they were in sort of a lucky place where they were, because most of the men who got back to England ended up in Gallipoli next. So, and we all know that wasn't, great either. So, they were quite, it's not nice to be interned, but it wasn't all bad. So as I said, entertainment, so not just the Timbertown Follies, we've got the Timbertown Operatic Society and also the Minstrel Show. So obviously this is of a time period where these things happened. And yes, so these can be found online. And if someone is taking part in it in your family, I'm sure you wouldn't even recognize them anyway, but it is what it is. It's part of history and we just have to move on. And they also had church services as well. So multiple religions, Catholic, Jewish, so they held different services for different people. Free Church of Scotland. There was loads and loads of different religious communities, and people, would just go and pray, or, just turn up when someone died. So since the men were not classified as prisoners of war, they were granted this, this leave, which you saw in Torquil's and the other men's, leaving for a month and then coming back. So this is my great-great-granddad Cecil's card. So just to give you an idea, he was on leave on the 11th of October 1916 until the 8th of the 11th, 1916. Now, before I knew all this, leave stuff happened, I had got his dad's death certificate here. So I hadn't seen this first. I hadn't really looked into it as much. So this was many years ago. But I knew he was the informant. So I was thinking, I knew he was in a camp at this time, but I didn't know they could leave, and so I was thinking, how on earth, it must be a mistake. It has to be. So now it makes sense lining this date up, because it's within the time. There must have been news that poor Martin was not very well, and then he died just before, Cecil had gone back. And then there's another date here, 13th of March, and that is until, I think it was the 11th of April, and he was allowed to go back to get married. So it's probably a good job he did, because otherwise he wouldn't be here. So so he got married on the 6th of April, had a few days with his new wife Florence, and then had to go back to camp. Now obviously you're thinking, well, did they have to go back if they're already in England, or if they're already back in Scotland? Well, again, they had, these sort of talks that they had to go back, but that is why those photographs were taken in the first place. It was so that if anyone did decide to go walkies off, when they were at home, they could go and get them and bring them back to camp. So yeah, they would go and do it, but some people did manage to get back home and stayed out of sight, but most of the men did just go back. And again, it was their orders to stay. So now this is one of the obituaries. So I thought I've got two to show you. Again, it will be in the handout, so you don't have to read it all. But these two men I'm going to show you are from the Isle of Lewis. So again, it's not looking good. There was 9 who died of natural causes in total, or of wounds if they did have any wounds whilst not taking back Antwerp. So Yeah, over 4 years, that's not too bad. So, but in here is something, again, you can only get in the magazine. So you're getting this social impact of what was going on in the camp when poor old John passed. And here he is again from, this is the original photo, I haven't unblurred it. It's exactly as you would find it on the archive and website. And we've got a nice little, personal sort of poem going on here, which again, it's quite sad because this guy looks fairly young, Donald. So yeah, there's lots of information here which you cannot get anywhere else other than viewing these magazines. So I mentioned the other archives you can go to. So like the Imperial War Museum, they have some of these magazines, but they have about 2 or 3. The University of Groningen itself has all of them, which I have all of them. But my own personal copy, I have about half in my personal collection. So if you do have any members in your family of any sort of prisoner of war camps, if you see anything on eBay, or just snap it up whilst you can, because this is what I would call like gold. It's very hard to get hold of, and in the condition I've got some of them in, they're over 100 years old. It's amazing, all the stuff you can find. And then whilst I was there, I did visit John and Donald and the other men who didn't make it back. So it's a very nice little cemetery, and lots of little frogs hopping around. Was really, quite a water link there. So very nicely done. So the Portsmouth Museum and Archive, as I said earlier, you've got the little archive, which is right at the back of the whole of the Docklands, and it's like a normal sort of terraced house. But you are only allowed one person in there per viewing, and you have to have clearance and all of this stuff. So it's, you have to make sure you're well prepared if you're going to the actual archive of the Docklands. The museum archive, on the other hand, is different. They have a website. You can search for your ancestors. If you typed in Timbertown Follies, some stuff would come up for that. So long story, but this is my great-great-granddad's embroidery. So this is me in that museum. So that's the embroidery. I don't know why he did Royal Naval Brigade, because he was Royal Naval Division. Maybe he wasn't even in the brigade bit though. So it's quite, he might be doing it for somebody else. But it's, I mean, the detail was absolutely stunning. And it went there by mistake. And that's another story. But in a way, it's nice that it's there, so I can just go anytime. So again, just check those random little pockets of information that you might not have thought about before. So now looking at some other archives, again, because we don't have time, just to consider the Imperial War Museum. There's stuff there, but not as much as the National Archives. And again, you need a few months. Like if you were looking to book now or in a week's time, you wouldn't be able to book a slot to go there. It's very limited, and I think it's only a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And usually it's like the next available date is a few months. So if you are planning on coming down to London, do that in advance. The Royal Greenwich Museums as well at the Card Library. I personally haven't actually done any research here, so I need to find somebody who wants me to go there, because I haven't found it in my personal stuff. And again, some of the Greenwich stuff is at the archives. And Greenwich is quite an annoying place to get to. The British Library, always a great resource for looking at stuff. And Karen on our call is an Indian specialist in military. So again, it's amazing what you can find in these files that can be linked to your ancestors. And the National Museum of the Royal Navy, which is also known as the NMRN. So just to finish me off, so it's another ancestral sort of, thing, which oral histories, meeting up with people. People are scared nowadays. So this is me, pre-steroid face, by the way. Yeah, this is my cousin Heather. And I met her for the first time at Austin Airport in Texas, literally when I got off the plane with her husband and stayed with them. So I'd met them through a cousin on Ancestry, but I'd never met her. So yeah, I just took the plunge. We then got matching naval tattoos because why not? It was a naval link while we were meeting. So that was our matching. All three of us got it, even the husband, because he had a naval connection, but obviously not to us. So we got that just to commemorate my visit. Then this is me. I did have a cowboy hat on. But yeah, that is some other embroidery from Texas, which they had in their family. So I didn't know that either until I obviously got there. So you just don't know what you're going to find. I'd done a little presentation for them. There was about, again, I went for dinner and there was about 40 of them. So I met 40 of my family members who I'd never met, which who does that? I mean, I do, but you know, it's just worth sometimes just taking that plunge and going for it. So this is my like little presentation I printed for them. So, and here we have another embroidery piece that they have had in their household the whole time. And again, I would not have known that if I hadn't have gone. So, and there is a little bit blurred, but very, again, you think, how do these men do this on ships? It's crazy. So these were some of my Portsmouth ancestors who some of them had gone over to America. Some of them actually went into the pub industry. So this is another thing to consider. So when you were sort of discharged or, you know, ready to, you know, you're a bit old, the Navy would, you know, give you a cheaper rate for taking over pubs. And yeah, I mean, a lot of the Navy men did have drink issues, and they certainly had more when they took over these pubs. You know, so it is worth just looking at that side of things if you do have ancestors. I mean, I know my ancestors, they took over a pub for about 30 years. They made a will, but not everyone who makes a will is rich, because they were buried in an unmarked grave in the Portsmouth graveyard. So, you know, but they had left their £82 or what I think, well, £32 to one of their sons, the second son, who was on his way to America, as he was on like the HMS something or other in the Cape Verde in the middle of the sea. Because I think the eldest son was in Devonport prison. So, you know, all these things, it happens, but it's great when you've got a multitude of different resources. So look everywhere you can. So then we'll have some questions and answers, hopefully some answers. But other than that, this has been me, and I hope I haven't done your head in too much or gone too fast. So yeah, here I am, and thank you very much for having me. And now you can have me back.
Amazing, Jade. Thank you so much.
And I didn't know. Oh, am I? Oh, I am back. Yeah, it's me. It's the technological side of things, Claire. I need to make you bigger.
That's all right. You just need to maybe unshare your screen.
Oh, I wanted to show you I wanted to show you something though.
All right. Okay.
Oh no, I can do that on here. I'm talking. Yeah, technology is not my thing. So before any sort of questions, I was just going to show you some of these. So this is the carpentry I'm talking about, which were made. They're all boxes, great and small. So I've got Cecil's, as you can see, R&D. You've got Groningen there.
Wow.
And I've also purchased off of eBay some other men's woodwork, just because it's, again, I don't really have many links to anything except for this. A lot of it's, you know, as I said, I've come from a sort of single parented background all along the way, really. So yeah, it's quite nice to have that special link. But this is what he made, and that is him and his wife, Florence. So I said, yeah, got married and had about 10 days and then got rid of him for another few months. I mean, she was probably sad at the time, but we'd love that now, wouldn't we? And I do also have, I mean, I brought my collection just out. Oh, some of them have fallen out. But again, these are some of the magazines. So I've also got like some of the operatic stuff too.
Did you manage to buy the camp magazines just like online then, or how did you find them?
Yeah, online. It's just sort of, they usually go for about £20 each, which I don't think's bad at all. Not when you're investing in your own history. But they got some lovely things, like so for Christmas they do like a Christmas sort of, picture. But yeah, again, you can find lots of things out. I've got like poems by the R&D here. So you just never know what you're going to come across. I haven't found Cecil in here at all. So what's a girl to do? But maybe he was a quiet type. I don't know where I get it from. But yeah, just keep looking at anything you can. So yeah, that was just a little collection of mine. And yeah, you can buy them online if you're lucky enough to get them.
And I think if you're looking for something in particular, it's really easy on eBay just to set up a sort of keyword search.
Yes, yeah.
Notifications for that types of items that you're looking for.
Well, because they typed them themselves and made everything themselves, they were published by HN Workman, which is a keyword to put in for these. So he started off by publishing the magazines for the guys because he was a local, and became like a famous lithograph and sort of artist. And they've got a whole museum dedicated to this guy in Groningen. But in World War II, sadly, he was shot by the Germans. He was executed. So what they would do is they would line up the men and probably the women in separate bits, but 1 to 10. And he was number 11. And one of the lineup had managed to escape. So he by default became number 10 and was shot. So yeah, it's quite, again, linking again that, World War I, World War II, and just, yeah. Surreal.
Amazing. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any naval relatives? Any questions? This is your opportunity here to ask Jade, any military or, World War questions that you might have. Feel free to put your hand up.
And obviously you can email Claire or myself if you can't think of anything and you want it answered later.
Yeah, or if you're a bit shy and you want to put it in the chat, you can put it in the chat as well. Everybody's gone quiet.
I've scared them all off. It's that London accent of mine.
Maybe you've explained it really well.
That's it, like Karen, who is on the chat, like she's done stuff at the British Library, which again, it's nearer to her and the archive's nearer to me. But there's all sorts of these resources, you can get your hands on. And even linking back to Claire's stuff, with the linking the RAF records with the ADM, it's something you wouldn't think to look at unless you sort of stumble over it.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually looked at World War One RAF airmen, but they've came from the Royal Naval Air Service, so you can get the ADM staff because they were the Navy and they were pilots in the Navy, and then obviously whenever the two services joined in 1918, then they went into the RAF. So actually, if they came from the naval side rather than the Royal Flying Corps, it's actually really good because the records are a lot more complete. Obviously, if they're coming from the Royal Flying Corps, they're in those kind of burnt records potentially.
Yeah, because obviously, the bomb, that got all the records. Because the service records, I'm sure most of you are aware, are being like transferred over to the archives from the MOD. It is going to take quite a while. I have done some of the service records. At the moment, if you're searching, they're currently under the reference W0423. Again, you need an advance order and you need at least 4 days notice. So you can't just turn up and have it, and you can't just turn up and order it for 4 days time. It has to be an advance order, because they physically need to sort it out, go and get it, and obviously it's a brand new thing sort of coming through. Also any older records like muster rolls for the sort of 1800s sort of vibe, a lot of these are not used often, so they've actually put them in the salt mines in Cheshire. So that needs also 4 days advance ordering. And it does come up when you're searching. But if you're at the archives and you only find that out there, you'd have to make another visit. So yeah, so they've put it like it's 2 miles underground of records or something wild like that. So they're running out of space.
Yeah, yeah. Helen says, thank you very much. Great talk. So much great information. And she's glad that you're going to have a handout because she'll catch up.
Oh, yeah. Claire will have to check my spelling mistakes. I said former tap degree. And I still teach tap. I'm at the archives by day and I'm teaching tap and singing by night. So yeah. Oh yeah, no, I just scrolled down. Oh, Karen said thank you. Yeah, I said I'm not very technical. So yeah, any sort of links Claire can send on to you, or you can contact me directly. That's fine as well.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll actually just put your website into the chat. So if anyone wants to reach out themselves, then they can do. So I don't think we've got any questions. This is your last opportunity if anyone has any questions. Has anyone got any naval ancestors?
Maybe don't. They might have soon. Maybe it's the Isle of, the Isle of Lewis stuff. Can anyone? Maybe someone could tell me if I did an all right bit on the Isle of Lewis. I said I was clueless to. I said I love an island, but I just thought I'll pick something which I'm also a novice at that bit because then we're both in the same boat.
I think certainly when you're doing courses and you're picking a project, you want to sort of challenge yourself, don't you? You want to sort of go outside that comfort zone. So, I mean, you couldn't have done it, anymore. I mean, really, you should go for a visit.
Yeah, I know. I can see it's quite hard to get to these Hebrides, and I'm not a fan of flying, so yeah. But no, I love Scotland, as Claire knows. So yeah, being from a concrete jungle, it's very nice to get out in the wild. But yeah.
And now that you're finished at Strathclyde, you need to make more plans to come up to Scotland.
Yeah, I know. I do love it up at, it's quite sad to be home. It's definitely cleaner air for sure. But yeah, if you do have any island links, again, I know they've got their own little history societies as well, which probably hone in on separate things, and you just don't know by piecing things together. But also, I said I picked them as a novice just because we all have to make mistakes, and it's fine to make a mistake as well. So we all go barking up the wrong tree in our family trees and across over rabbit holes, you name it. I'm sure we've all done it. So you're going to learn something along the way anyway.
That's it. You hit potholes, as I say, and I find sometimes you go to a new archive and it's sometimes the first time going to a new archive sort of feels like a wasted visit because you don't know, what the ordering system's going to be, what the layout's going to be, and you sometimes don't get a hell of a lot done in the first visit, and it can be quite disappointing. But when you go the next time, then you feel a bit better prepared.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are making a long trip down, and it's very hard, isn't it? Because again, it's, we drove, as you know, Claire, we drove up to Scotland. If you are getting trains and stuff, these things, it's not cheap. Like I had gone across to the the Brussels Military Museum in September. Luckily, my friend took me because he was Dutch but could speak both languages. So again, it was fascinating to go literally you wouldn't even think, oh my God, this is here. But just to get those difference of, ordering. But I looked at the ordering system and could not figure it out at all, just by, not understanding it. So being there was so like, wow. Just to just don't rule things out. And sometimes you might just need a helping hand on these language barriers or transcriptions and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's so many tools on the internet now for things like that anyway.
Yeah.
The Dutch have, amazing free resources with birth, marriage, death, burial cards, archive stuff, it's all free, and actually quite easy to search,
Yeah, that I think the Dutch websites are really great. And again, like the same with the Irish stuff. I mean, and a lot of them didn't survive some of the record, you know, because obviously pre 1864, yes, 1864. So yeah, it's like nice to get something for free. I'm sure we all like freebies.
I think a lot of other countries could probably learn a bit from the Dutch.
Yeah, yeah. And also the Canadian, New Zealand, Australia, you know, look at those ones too. Because I think if you were from even a smaller town on the mainland of Scotland, you know, a lot of immigration over to Canada and places like that, it's worth looking at, and those records should also be free.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Well, thank you again, Jade.
Thank you.
Before we finish up, the next webinar will be on Thursday, the 12th of December at 7 p.m. This will actually be a social event, and the theme will be genealogy success stories. So come along, stick on your Christmas jumper, pour a glass of ginger wine, and get the mince pies looked out. And also bring with you digital, you know, copies of any documents and photos that tell your own genealogy success stories. The event will not be recorded. It will be just an in-person event on the night. Let me just put a link into the chat box for that. If you're not a member of Lanarkshire Family History Society, why not join now? Membership starts at just £10. You receive 3 journals per year, monthly e-news, and also use of the research centre in Motherwell. Just another quick announcement, the Society will not be doing the monthly webinars for 2025. It sounds weird saying 2025 now.
Yeah.
When I took the job on for Lanarkshire, it was during COVID, and I don't actually think that we all thought that, you know, these kind of events would actually be going for so long. The numbers have sort of dwindled slightly over the years. So what they're going to do is sort of mix things up a bit, have some events at the centre in Motherwell, but also have some online for the overseas members. So they're working away in the background at the moment and trying to decide what type of events that they're going to have moving forward into next year. But remember and come next month, and I want to hear your success stories. I'm going to try and look some stuff out myself. So you can grab the link just now from the chat if you want to register for it. And I look forward to seeing everybody next month. And thank you again, Jade.
Thank you, and thank you for coming.
And I'll speak to you soon.
All right.
Okay, bye everyone. See you next month. Bye.
Bye.